In this video I made the other day, one of these Poetics of Walking videos, I was talking about swerving and curving, and I mentioned I don't know if I mentioned it in the thing itself, in the video itself, but in the notes, in the description box, I just talked about even atoms swerve. And what I was kind of referring to there, which I couldn't really think into at the time, was this theory that came up. It features in James Joyce. That's why I mentioned it there, because I was referring to James Joyce a little bit, beginning of Finnegan's Wake. But this thing, even atoms swerve, which in James Joyce comes out as Eve and Adams. But anyway, about atoms swerving. It comes from old, really old ancient Greek theories, from Lucretius and I think Democritus, philosophers from, 2,500 years ago, maybe, something like that. But it's such an interesting idea that Lucretius had, I'll say, which is about, because they were atomists, well before atoms were discovered and thought through. These guys said that the universe, this stuff, is made up of fundamental particles, and they call them atoms, and it's these atoms and the combinations and the interactions and interchanges between these atoms which produce the world. I think they imagined them as tiny little dots of matter, rather than the more complex energetic point phenomena I might think of them now. But either way, pretty sophisticated set of ideas. But it's so beautiful what they did with this idea, I think, Lucretius and Democritus, which is this swerving thing, this clinamen thing, which I mentioned, the clinamen, a tendency to swerve, which is that they talk about it in terms of falling. They imagine the universe as kind of falling into existence. You know what I mean? Falling, like snow on a windless day. So the universe is falling into existence, and all the atoms are falling. It's parallel to one another, just falling. But you have to imagine in these writings that each of these atoms has an inherent tendency to swerve, what they called the clinamen. So as they're falling, they're swerving, and these swerves cause them to collide and bounce off one another and break up and form vortices around one another, and and do all the interactions, which is a really great idea, I think. And just imagining this snowfall of atoms, which just swerving because of their inbuilt tendencies, is lovely. And in a sense, although they were, it was just a guess, it was kind of an echo in some way of the future, I think. Because in a sense, that is kind of what happens, sort of. If the Big Bang is to be believed, and I have no reason to suppose it shouldn't, then that is a kind of fall, isn't it? It is a kind of falling. There is this super condensed singularity which expands to create space and fill space simultaneously. But that expansion is just a kind of falling, isn't it? A falling in every direction at once. So all of the initial energy and plasma, and then subsequently particles and subatomic particles and atoms form out of that fall. They fall in every direction simultaneously, and they do kind of swerve, don't they? These things do swerve. In fact, you can see the swerves in the cloud chambers of colliders. They swerve like that, and they swerve like this, swerve like tendrils. Yeah, I think it's gorgeous, that. So I'm kind of imagining if the point, so you can't really talk about it as a point, but if you imagine the point of the Big Bang being spread out, so it's a plane, yeah, and then the inflationary universe being that plane inflating downwards, then it would just be like a snowfall of atoms. They condense at the beginning out of the plasma, and then the atoms of the universe would fall as snow, but on the way down, and they'd fall forever. They would fall forever. They'd never settle, but they just fall forever, and on their flow, on their way towards the end of forever, their inbuilt tendencies would form these clinamens, and this would be the result. Here we would be, great snowmen and snowwomen falling forever through the multidimensional universe. I just like that idea, really. That swerve, that curve from Bend of Bay.